I've been on a bit of a fuzz kick lately, and sometimes we luck out with the timing of these things. Yeah, we wound up using this on everything, including the drums, and I wanted to make sure you got a chance to hear the extra bit of crash and trash that we were being subtle with in the beginning. Here's what we're working with here. It's a box. Guitar in, output out. There's a power jack. There's just one knob. More on that in a bit. And instead of a foot switch, we've got a toggle for bypass if we need it. More on that in a while as well. Now, the way to approach this is to start with our guitar's volume around 60-70%. Depends on the pickups and pickup configuration. We'll start this bypass, and then we'll switch it on with my Jazzmaster at around 60-70%. And then we'll bring the gain up little by little from the volume knob, but not all the way, just enough. That's a really fun place to be right there. And normally, when you back a guitar off that much, it just gets quiet. But here, we're more or less at the starting point. It's already doing a thing around the edges that we can hear. But now let's take a listen to what happens when I bring out the parts caster and start bringing the volume up all the way. Now, obviously, there's a lot of drive pedals out there that are touch dynamic and volume reactive, but one of the things that I really appreciate here is that I can get into that drive without it upsetting where I sit in the mix, volume-wise. And that's super helpful if you're recording digitally like I am, and I really like to use analog effects, but I don't want to blow out my interface. All the guitars you're hearing here are just guitar into the Ruthie, into my Universal Audio Apollo with a Neve 1084 Unison plugin. And then I'm using the Universal Audio Dream Amp Simulator plugin in Logic. It's a fairly straightforward and consistent setup, typically as long as I'm not using a drive pedal up front. So it was really nice to be able to use that and have it react the same way that my real amp would. Now, this one knob right here, you might expect it to be gain or volume, but it's not. It's actually tone. It's called the Mittens control. Don't forget your mittens. Remember how the Hudson Broadcast has a low cut knob? This kind of does something like that. It's how much of the lower frequencies we want to make it into the circuit. More bass makes things bigger and hairier, and when you roll it off, it tightens things up a little bit. Now's a good time to talk about impedance, and this is not a Blue Chew ad. I'm talking about impedance. That's the overall resistance to electrical change. Transistor-based pedals a lot of times are built with the expectation that the cable plugged into its input jack is connected directly to a guitar at its other end. And that's because the transistor is biased or configured around that typical pickup output. When we introduce a buffer, which may be needed for certain types of setups or just conveniently built into a pedal we're using, that can upset the balance. It's not the end of the world, but with a pedal like this, it's almost always better to have this up front. And I'm going to turn my attention to this bass right here. A lot of people have been asking about it and talking about it in the comments. It's an Epiphone Jack Cassidy bass. It's an interesting little number, but it's super fun to play. I really get along with it, especially with these flat wounds. Never done flat wounds before, and I'm loving them. And I want to draw your attention to the pickup here. This is a JCB1 low impedance pickup. And in this bass, it's wired to an impedance selector switch down here. It actually runs the signal through a transformer to build it up to 50, 250, or 500 ohms of resistance. And that's to help it get along with other devices or to add some punch and to help with some of the tonal shaping along the way. And so you'll see it gives us just another source of control when we're playing through the Ruthie. Obviously, the objective of a pedal demo video like this is to show what the pedal sounds like. The thing is, every guitar I tested through this felt like something unique about the guitar was being brought out front. And I realize we're doing guitar show and tell here, but this Gold Fernandez Strat type thing, this has been my go-to for 60s, 70s funk and soul type stuff. And this makes it real easy to get into that warm, raspy vintage tone that's common on a lot of those songs. If you've watched this channel before, you've no doubt seen this guitar. It's probably my favorite one. It's a Reverb Jetstream, and by now it's had more pickups in it than a car wash. Heyo! But I have landed on these Gemini pickup Mercury 1 humbuckers, and what's really cool about these is they coil tap, but in a way that they don't lose all their output. I don't know how they do it, but they figured it out. So all that plus playing dynamics and the volume knob and the Ruthie lets me cover just a ton of ground without needing to look down at my board. If you've ever looked at the schematic for a guitar pedal, you've probably seen this symbol. That's the ground. And think of the ground like the ground, or how about like the floor at a barber shop? It gathers all the excess so it can be taken somewhere else. And in this schematic for a DoD 250, we can see that up here it's being used to help filter the incoming power. That's what the capacitor arrangement is doing there. It's also needed for this op amp to work. That's what pin 4 is specifically there for. And we can also see this is an asymmetric clipper. Once those diodes wake up and start clipping, that excess signal to the ground. Think of it this way. If you've got a volume knob, all we're doing is routing the signal between the output that we hear and the ground. Now, in 99% of pedals, probably more, the ground and the negative are kind of one and the same. In fact, if we take this Seymour Duncan pedal and a continuity tester, we can see that the ground from the switches connects to the sleeve of the input and the output jacks, along with the center of the center negative power supply. That all gets a little bit twisted once we start dealing with older transistors of the PNP variety. You see, there's PNP transistors and NPN transistors. And you may have guessed P stands for positive, N stands for negative. And without going too far down a rabbit hole, PNP and NPN are essentially upside down world from one another. They're duct tape and WD-40, the inside of an air conditioner and the outside of an air conditioner. Abed and evil Abed. And if you were to take a circuit based around a PNP transistor like this Dallas Rangemaster and convert it to use an NPN transistor, you would need to flip the polarity of the entire thing. So notice the difference in the direction of the current here. Also notice that we need to power with a positive 9-volt power supply, which we can get simply by flipping around the leads of the battery or power source, since it's just a relative comparison. This polarized capacitor also needs to be flipped around, and if we had any diodes, same thing. And now, because we're sending our excess positive voltage to the ground, we need to be extra careful not to daisy chain it up to some other center negative grounded pedal. Otherwise, we'd be crossing the streams, and that would be bad. Some pedals, like the Dunlop Jimi Hendrix Fuzz Face, take the easy way out and just say, yeah, this is battery only. The Ruthie uses some of those super special PNP transistors similar to the Fuzz Face, so it has a battery option, Or we can use a polarity inverter, like the one that came with my True Tone CS7, and as long as we run it off an isolated power supply, we're golden. That was a lot of words to say this uses PNP transistors, so you gotta respect the polarity. And typically when a pedal requires reverse polarity, they'll use a slightly larger jack that a regular center negative connector won't fit into. That's what my Eventide Mod Factor does, and it's what the Ruthie does. As you noticed, no foot switch. It really is designed as an always on pedal. If you want it off, just roll your volume down. If you really want it off, there is a switch on the back. I should also say that if you get one of these, yours won't look like this. In fact, this is the only one that looks like this. Every Ruthie is not only handmade and hand soldered, it's hand painted as well. There are these rad full color pieces of art. There's also the lower cost monochromatic ones like the one I have here. You also get a very nicely written instruction manual and a warranty in case anything on the inside stops working right. Now, I gotta be real honest. I was a bit worried when I first saw this, but it makes my guitars really happy. It addresses my own option paralysis, and it keeps me focused on my playing dynamics and serving the song. And the older I get, the more important that seems. Plus, look how well this lines up with the Dazzle camo pickguard I threw on that parts caster. It's like it was meant to be. Now, to learn more about this, head over to the YouTube, the Instagram, the website, and the Reverb shop. I got links for all those down in the video description. I'm very clearly digging this thing. It's got elements of the Hudson Broadcast, which you know I love, maybe a bit of the Oats and Molasses VB2, probably a little bit of the DoD Looking Glass as well, and it gets me playing the Jazzmaster again, so that's always a win. I'll catch you on the next one.